An enigmatic ancient book has quietly existed for almost 2 centuries in the heart of modern Europe. Its strange symbols, bizarre illustrations, and mixed religious iconography have baffled scholars. This is the Rohonc Codex, a work likened to the Bible of a forgotten parallel world. Could it be a warning from the past, a message from a time-traveling pilgrim about a lost civilization, or simply the product of a deranged mind? In the mid-19th century, a surge of nationalism swept through the European elite like a storm. This was an inevitable consequence of the period of widespread political instability known as the Spring of Nations. From there, a democratic revolution aimed at dismantling the old monarchical structures and creating independent nations. Starting in Hungary, this fervor ignited a passionate desire to rediscover the nation's roots. Ancient texts lost since the Middle Ages surfaced in increasing numbers, accompanied by a widespread hunt for historical artifacts. Capitalizing on this lucrative market, Samuel Literati Nimes, an archaeologist of Transylvanian origin, opened his Curious Curio shop in Buda in 1835. Inside, he displayed a wide array of coins, ancient books, manuscripts, paintings, secret writings, decrees, and even fossilized bones. All were intended to cater to the wealthy Hungarian aristocracy and satisfy their yearning for artifacts from their ancient past. One of his most prominent clients was Mrs. Gustav Benifei, the owner of an extensive collection of over 30,000 books. However, Nimes wasn't just a patriot. He was also a highly individualistic and somewhat eccentric character. He erected a massive mammoth skeleton right at the entrance of his antique shop to attract attention. Through his persistent pursuit and organization of antique auctions, Nimes quickly amassed a considerable fortune. Among his collection of artifacts was one book that stood out above the rest. Comprised 448 pages bound in a cardboard cover. Initially, the document was believed to date back to the 16th century, but its actual origin remained undetermined. The Bathyany family had simply noted it as a Hungarian prayer book. Yet, for many, the truth behind it defied all imagination. When the book was opened, the pages were filled with handwritten symbols that defied decipherment. They even bore a resemblance to ancient Hungarian script. Interspersed among them were 87 crude, strangely distorted drawings mixed with pagan and Islamic symbols. Moreover, the book depicted numerous unidentified leaders and battles that had never been recorded. Researchers suspected that this was the key to unlocking a lost chapter in Hungarian history. Today, that book is known as the Rohonc Codex, named after the town where the Bathyany Library was once located, now Recknitz in Austria. Nearly 200 years have passed since its discovery, but the content inside continues to confound linguists, historians, and occult researchers. Dozens of generations have attempted to decode the bizarre script and symbolic imagery hidden within the Rohonc Codex, but all have failed. Portions of the manuscript have vanished entirely, leaving behind puzzling gaps beneath nonsensical passages. Despite the fact that no one has been able to decipher it, the system of symbols within exhibits a strange consistency. The characters are nearly uniform in size and spacing, leading many scholars to believe that it's the work of a single individual or collective. Most pages contain 9 lines of text, but some have as many as 14, with no discernible markings to distinguish letters, words, or sentences. Within these strings of symbols are over 800 unique characters. This is 10 times the number of characters in any known alphabet. Worse yet, many of these symbols appear infrequently or even blend into the bizarre illustrations scattered throughout the manuscript. This has led to speculation that it could be a logographic system similar to Chinese, Egyptian hieroglyphs, or Mayan script. However, some pages contain familiar Latin characters that bear no interaction or connection to the rest of the text. There's also disagreement over whether it should be read from left to right, as is traditional in the West, or in reverse, as is customary in Eastern cultures. Some even suggest that every symbol should be viewed from bottom to top or rotated entirely. Efforts to connect the ancient symbols to Hungarian, Indian, or Arabic cultures have all reached dead ends. Other scholars insist that it's not a language at all, but rather a code intentionally created to conceal its contents forever. The Rohonc Codex lacks title pages. The illustrations within are crudely drawn, lacking both detail and aesthetic appeal. This suggests that the author received no formal training. Some drawings serve only as decoration or were even created to cover up spelling errors or incorrect symbols. Notably, at the bottom of many pages, faint anchor marks can be seen within a circle, topped by a star. This is a distinctive mark of paper originating in Venice around the first half of the 16th century. However, this material may have been used later or even counterfeited due to its popularity. Also noteworthy are the pictures that appear to illustrate familiar biblical scenes, such as the crucifixion of Jesus, the flagellation, the ascension, King David praying, Abraham sacrificing his son, and the adoration of the Magi, along with other religious events. The odd thing is that all of these are mixed in with astronomical symbols, crescent moons, stars, suns, and motifs resembling swastikas. It is precisely this chaotic combination that has sent scholars down a rabbit hole of speculation. Could these be the remains of a lost civilization where Christianity, Islam, and paganism once coexisted peacefully? Or have these three faiths merged into an entirely new ideology that history has permanently buried? Other, bolder theories suggest that this collection of multi-religious symbols is actually a code intended only for a select few, those with the ability to decipher the deeper meaning beneath each drawing. The mystery of the Rohonc Codex has sparked heated debate among academics and researchers for the past 2 decades, particularly since the first digitized version was released online. The symbols and drawings can be alarming, sometimes appearing to deliberately contradict the established accounts in the Bible. The most puzzling aspect is why the author of the manuscript was so fixated on mirroring everything. Most strangely, the images portraying the Tetragrammaton, the sacred name of God in Judaism, are also completely reversed. But why would the author do this? The answer might lie in a branch of Christianity. According to that belief, mirroring images is seen as a way to bring humans closer to the divine realm. However, a darker theory suggests a mystical ritual aimed at reversing the laws of nature, using reversed biblical stories and texts to conjure ancient magical forces. In this scenario, the scribe may have been seeking power beyond human limits, and the entire code system was created only to conceal those dangerous intentions. Additionally, there remains the possibility of a lost paradise, a place where a unified religion encompassing Christianity, Islam, and paganism once thrived in peace in medieval Hungary. This may seem absurd, but it's not entirely without merit, especially when we examine how the author intentionally altered classic violent scenes from the Bible. Images such as the massacre of the innocents, the flagellation, the Day of Judgment, and even the crucifixion of Jesus are all softened in a strange way. Most notably, Longinus is no longer the spear-wielding Roman soldier who pierced Christ's side. Instead, he kneels mournfully nearby, with no blood flowing from the wound in Jesus' chest, a stark contrast to medieval art that emphasized pain and death. The manuscript seems to invite viewers to sympathize with Longinus rather than condemn him. Could this unique and unconventional portrayal suggest a culture that valued empathy? Or does it simply reflect a society where violence and related images were completely eliminated? Another noteworthy detail is that while there are many drawings of hell, no depiction of demons ever appears. This is highly unusual in the context of Christian art of the time, which was filled with demonic imagery. All of this may provide clues that the author lived in an isolated cultural environment, separated from the outside world. But this still isn't enough to find out who was behind this mysterious book. The only writing that suggests authorship is the two Latin letters GN and N on the decaying, water-damaged pages numbered 222 and 223. Furthermore, the repetition of the letter N has led to suspicions that there may have been more than one author, possibly even related to the same family. However, due to the severe damage and poor quality of the microfilm, any conclusions remain speculation. For decades, all research on the Rohonc Codex was available only in Hungarian, leaving the world largely ignorant of its mysteries. Even today, the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, where the original is kept, resolutely rejects any new attempts at exploration, dismissing it as a forgery. If that's the truth, it seems that we must go back to learning about the person who found the mysterious book. Could it all be an elaborate hoax? Nimes gained widespread recognition for discovering many lost documents that helped reveal the forgotten history of Hungary. Starting in Transylvania, he roamed through small villages and into Galatia, Croatia, and Madia, searching for ancient artifacts. Nimes always disregarded the opinions of scholars, relying entirely on his intuition. His most notable collection included a handwritten letter from an official in the Ottoman political and military system, ancient texts from Transylvanian Prince János Kemeny, and an unsigned paper containing mysterious cuneiform characters. More importantly, Nimes discovered numerous artifacts related to the early Hungarian dynasties. Among them were a wooden book containing scriptures from the time of King Andrew and the Hungarian Illustrated Chronicle. Nimes's continued good fortune during his searches astounded collectors, historians, and linguists. Many of those artifacts shed light on previously unknown aspects of Hungarian history. These included unnamed people, strange languages, and previously undiscovered scripts, all of which contributed to a growing sense of national pride. However, these exhibits contained a large number of crude, technically poor drawings, as if they were created only to fill the spaces. In 1866, 24 years after Nimes's death, scholar Karol Sabo claimed that all of those documents were forgeries, products of a secret back room in his antique shop. Analyzing the wooden book from Turku, Sabo discovered that the words inside didn't exist in the era Nimes claimed. The ink and letter forms clearly bore the mark of the 18th century rather than the 14th, as claimed. This discovery led to a series of investigations into other artifacts that Nimes had made public. The results were that at least 23 of them were confirmed to be fake and were removed from many museum displays. The Hungarian Academy of Sciences Library, where the Rohonc Codex is kept, even relabeled the manuscript as a fake by Nimes. This is a judgment that most Hungarian historians and linguists still accept without question. But this is also odd and suspicious, as there is considerable evidence that the Rohonc Codex is an authentic artifact. The clearest evidence lies in the Bathini family's archives from 1743. Here, the Rohonc Codex is listed as a Hungarian prayer book with completely matching dimensions and descriptions, appearing more than half a century before Nimes died. Furthermore, he meticulously recorded all of his fake works but never mentioned the Rohonc Codex, not even once. The scale of this mysterious book far exceeds at least 10 times any fraud attempts that Nimes ever made. Moreover, if it were a fake, creating such a complex manuscript would be absurd, as the longer it is, the easier it is to expose flaws. If the Rohonc Codex isn't a product of Nimes, what is it? Despite being buried in the indifference of Hungarian academia, some international research has persistently pursued the mystery. Shortly after it was donated to the library in 1838, Hungarian historian and linguist János Journey was the first to seriously attempt to decode the Rohonc Codex. He carefully examined each page, noting ink smudges, confirming that the paper was indeed a 16th century Venetian product. Based on the drawings inside, a theory was put forward that the codex was of Christian nature. It may have also been written by Tatars, Central Asian inhabitants who had settled in Hungary and converted to Christianity. Linguistically, Johnny speculated that the text could be a lost Asian language used by that group of people. However, these were only initial speculations. The next attempt to decode came from another eccentric character named Nemedy. He was a dropout from mainstream science, styling himself as a professor of the nation. Nemedy even lived for 2 years in the wilderness, wearing only underwear and a monastic robe sewn by his own hands. He lived on a vegetarian diet and lectured to curious villagers in exchange for wheat and fruit. This researcher devoted his life to tracing the origins of the Hungarians and was convinced that the Rohonc Codex was written in an ancient runic script. He was also the first to discover that the symbols within the manuscript followed an order that no one had previously noticed. The entire text in the codex is right justified, indicating that it should be read from right to left, as in Eastern tradition. Nemedy published his findings independently. In 1898, he presented his work to the Language Council of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, hoping to receive research funding. But it was rejected coldly. They stated that it was impossible to decode a text with 800 symbols. No creature on earth could read such a language, not even the person who created it. According to these experts, memorizing and processing an alphabet consisting of hundreds of secret symbols was beyond the limits of the human brain. The council concluded that Nemedy had wasted his rare passion on a futile task. Anyone who encouraged him to continue on that journey was doing harm to both him and the academic community. For nearly a century afterward, the Hungarian Academy not only scorned but also actively prevented any research efforts related to the Rohonc Codex. In 2002, Victoria Enchu claimed that the text in the book was written in the vulgar, colloquial Latin dialect of the region of Dacia, reading from right to left and from bottom to top. Unlike scholars who had previously viewed the codex through a biblical lens, this writer suggested that the manuscript was recounting the history of the Romanian kingdom and the conquest of Hungary under Emperor Vlad. Another theory, put forth by Indian researcher Mahesh Kumasinghe, suggested that the content may have been written from left to right and from top to bottom in a variant of script belonging to the Brahmi system. He translated the first 24 pages of it into Hindi and then into Hungarian. However, both the theory about Emperor Vlad and the Sanskrit translation were quickly exposed as cheap academic hoaxes. But a final glimmer of hope appeared in 2018. The academic journal Cryptologia published a breakthrough study conducted by software developer Rohonc Codex and art historian Gabor Tokaj. This was the result of decades of independent work and was considered the closest attempt to decipher the mystery of the codex. The two linguists started from different directions. Codex focused on digitizing the entire manuscript to statistically analyze the symbols and recurring structures in the text. Tokaj, meanwhile, approached the codex from an artistic perspective, examining every detail of the symbolic imagery. He also discovered the manuscript's calendar system, with the birth and death dates of Christ being 6 BC and 29 AD. This suggested that the creator of the codex came from a culture that believed the universe was created around 5,000 years earlier. In 2011, Codex and Tokaj decided to collaborate by comparing the characters that appeared around images related to the biblical text, thereby creating a unique visual dictionary. In it, the first word they deciphered for the manuscript was born, describing the scene of the three magi worshiping the infant Christ. From that breakthrough, many biblical proper names and ancient titles were discovered. And in just 2 years, the two had deciphered about 400 of the more than 800 symbols, while also beginning to identify the language's grammar, clearly distinguishing verbs, nouns, and prepositions. They also endeavored to rearrange the loose pages of the codex and concluded that approximately 22 pages were missing entirely. By using excerpts from the Bible as a reference point, the researchers identified many other encoded passages, such as the Lord's Prayer, prayers to the Blessed Virgin Mary, the ritual of communion, and the conclusion of the Gospel according to Mark. However, both Kiraly and Tokai admitted that their work was still unfinished, and that the book would likely never be completely deciphered due to too many existing problems. If the Rohonc Codex is indeed just a prayer book, why was the vow written in such a complex and obfuscated system? And why are familiar religious images so distorted? The Academy's obstinate denial of its authenticity also raises questions. Could the missing pages of the Rohonc Codex be hidden somewhere within the Bonny Library? Or have they been concealed to hide a truth that humanity isn't yet ready to confront? Why is the vow expressed through such an intricate and deliberately confusing system of writing? Furthermore, what accounts for the unsettling distortion of otherwise recognizable religious symbols and imagery? The unwavering and almost stubborn refusal by the scientific establishment to acknowledge its legitimacy only adds to the sense of mystery and prompts further investigation. Is it possible that the lost sections of the Rohonc Codex are secretly tucked away within the vast collection of the Bonny Library? Or perhaps, even more disturbingly, have they been deliberately hidden to suppress a profound truth, one that humankind is simply not yet prepared to accept or even comprehend?